Brilliant. So we are just 30 seconds away from 10 to 12, and we're coming into our final session of the morning, that of interconnectedness and community, led by Richard Bubb. Can I just check, Richard, are you out there?
I'm here, Richard. Yep. Can you hear me?
So, yep, I'd like to give a really, really warm welcome to Richard Bubb, to remind us of the power of connection and community. Richard has been championing ecological sustainability for more than 3 decades, which is probably a shock to him. He's at home in his overalls installing renewable energy systems, teaching many people about the circular economy, or coaching tomorrow's leaders how to be more able in the subject of climate change. He's our sustainability polymath, and I would like to welcome you, Richard, to the conference to talk for 20 minutes.
10.
10?
10.
Oh, I thought this went through to 10 past 12. Anyway, talk for the things you've been given.
I'm happily keeping it to 10. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, sorry.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me today. Unfortunately, I can't be here all day. I'm actually on another conference working with some climate leaders of the future from across Europe, and unfortunately, I'm sort of dipping to that conference over the last 2 days and tomorrow as well. Jane asked me to say a few words about the overall sort of feelings about developing community plans. I've been involved with developing community-based action plans for most of those 3 decades at a sort of rural level, an urban level, and in my own parish as well. I live near Bridge North, so I'm in your patch too. I've seen how a lot of plans can either work very well or fail. And given all the passion, and it's fantastic to see 120 people here this morning, given the passion that you're putting into today, it's really, really important to give you the chance of succeeding and working over the next few years, really. So in terms of community action plans, I think I'm going to start with a contradiction and say that they need to be both simple and complex. And by complex, I mean it's really important that you analyze your issue, your theme, and you really get beyond the simple problems. It's so important to keep questioning your assumptions, to keep making sure that you're looking at problems, not symptoms. And it's really important that you really do try to get to the bottom of what those root causes of those problems are. And for example, some years ago, I did some work with some tenants whose landlord had heard their complaints about their energy bills for many years. The landlord had spoken to tenants and they'd agreed to put air source heat pumps in. So it cut their bills and it lowered their carbon emissions. Everybody was really happy about that. 6 months later, everybody was really unhappy about that. The tenants ended up with much higher bills and the houses were cold. And the root cause of the problem was just quite simple. They were very poorly insulated properties. And if the tenants had spent some more money on just insulation, they would have probably solved the root cause of what the tenants' problems was. So they need to be complex, question your assumptions. And one issue about when you're working across themes is do check the actions that you're developing within themes against other themes. It's easy for different themes to have complementary actions, and those really ought to be priorities for you as an overall group. And it's also easy for actions to emerge that might contradict each other. So do spend that time of focusing in your own groups on developing your root causes and your actions to those, and then step back and understand what all of the actions across all the theme groups, what do they mean? Do they contradict? Do they create additional problems? Or where are they complementary? And in terms of plans being simple, I think that's about the message. How do you get the message out that people can understand what you're about? Do your neighbours, do your friends, do your family, do they get what you're about? And getting that message, does that actually generate enthusiasm? Does that actually buy ownership? Does your message and your simple plan get more people to be part of it and to spread the word? I think it's also important to not be focused about when you produce your end plan, and the end plan being the absolute goal. The process of developing these plans is really, really important. Just hearing some of the comments in the last presentation, I really enjoy being part of community-based planning because of the opportunity to learn new things, the opportunity to look closely at a system that we're in, to uncover things in there that I didn't know before. And obviously that individual learning is really, really important, but that group learning is also very, very important, just to enable that as a group, as a process, you're developing far more capital and understanding about your problem, about your area, about what needs to be fixed. Enjoy the process all the way through. Don't regard the production of the plan as just being the end goal. So it's complex and it's simple, and you've got to enjoy the process. But the other thing I'd say that's really, really important is be ambitious. Have a vision for what a future is that you want to create. We're tackling the most important challenge the planet literally faces, and don't be afraid to create a really ambitious vision of what South Shropshire is going to look like in 20 years, in 30 years, in 50 years. Don't be put off by when people say that won't work, that's too hard, we'll never be able to find a solution for that. That's the purpose of people like you working together to find these actions. Be ambitious and be proud of being ambitious. And that creates a difficulty. You're looking at a vision of 2050 maybe, about how different it's going to be. Create milestones along the way. Your vision doesn't appear on the 1st of January in some future year. It takes time to emerge. Create these milestones to understand what your little steps are along the way, and you can celebrate those successes as you go along. I think that's really, really important that you understand this is a difficult process and this is the path we're going to take. And I think the final thing I'd say is about being optimistic about this. It's a challenge. It's the most difficult thing you can possibly tackle. And I've been involved in this for sort of 3 decades, as Richard pointed out. And when I started being aware of this, I was aware the Rio Earth Summit in 1992 was the first time I really understood climate change. And the carbon dioxide count was something like 460 at the time. And they said, if it gets beyond 480, it will be, sorry, 380, 480. And of course, you look at where the carbon dioxide emission is now, it's shooting way over where scientists are predicting we have a runaway effect. But also, you look at what has happened positively in the environment over the last 20, 30 years. We have electric cars, we have photovoltaic panels on lots of roofs, we have wind turbines in farms, we have the view that waste should be eradicated, not put in a great big hole. We have a view that people now talk about things like circular economy and donut economics as being things that we accept as being a really important way. Look at the change in food consumption and veganism being really popular now. These would have been seen as almost impossible 30 years ago, and yet they're almost mainstream, or many of them are mainstream now. So understand that change can take place, and just remember that all social change comes from the passion of individuals. I'm really looking forward to seeing how your plan emerges over time. I hope to be part of it next year. I couldn't be part of it this year because of work commitments. I really want to see how you can drive a new dynamic vision, plan and actions for South Shropshire over the next years and help to save the planet. So that was all a little bit I had to say to lead into lunch. I believe I can take some questions if there are any, but that was just a little bit of a snapshot of my experience of delivering community action plans and understanding the success factors and some of the issues that work against you. You're muted, Richard.
Damn, I thought I was going to get through the whole day without without that happening. Sorry. Yeah. So thanks for a stirring an interesting presentation of community and connectedness. I wondered if there were any particular localities that you might point us to be particularly inspiring in the course of your experience of this issue.
I think I could probably research some, actually. I think many of these plans, they have a lifetime and a peak, and so those peaks of enthusiasm, that can be really fantastic. At other times, they sort of wane a little bit. I did some work in Warsaw some years ago with the local council there, and they developed some community-based actions that were very much targeted about how communities can be supported to some of their own economic actions. And it was very, very interesting in terms of there were gyms being set up, there were people starting little community groups, and the council supported their economic development. And that worked well. And there are a number of community development and community enterprises that continue to run now. The Transitions Towns movement is very, very good. And some of them have been very, very popular and very, very supportive. I think I'd also look at the not so loud community plans, those community groups who've been going for 20 years and still continue to produce actions. I'd also look at it at a different level and look at the little village halls all over Shropshire that actually, they might not regard themselves as community plans, but they've probably been existing for many, many years, providing services for communities, what communities want. So there's lots of skills there already. It's just about focusing maybe on, we have a clear understanding that we want to make South Shropshire a zero carbon area. What do we do to focus our existing skills and existing resources, and maybe the support of other groups as well, into that priority?
Great, thank you, Richard. And Alan Wilson, you have a question for Richard?
Yes, please. Given your experience with this, Richard. Okay, forgive that one. In view of your experience in preparing these sort of things, is there a need to get a professional publicist on board, i.e. to put the paperwork together so it comes across glossy and that sort of thing, or is it something you've experienced there's no necessity for?
I think often there's skills within the larger group to be able to do that. And I know some of the work that Lizzie's been doing in terms of the website, has been very professional as well. I think you need a professional level response, because that absolutely brings credibility to a plan and an actions. Whether you need to pay for it is a different matter. I mean, it's often checking the networks and seeing who might have a friend or who could do it or who used to do it in a retired job. I think it's often one thing that's encouraged me a lot about the COVID response has been actually how many different broad sectors have really said we must have an environmental focus on the recovery plan, being from musicians to sports people. So at the moment, this group is in a good space to maybe ask out for that support externally, who might be able to help you pro bono to do that. Publicity has to be good. And one of the things that I do for every report I write is I have somebody proofread it, often pay somebody to proofread it, because I only read my words back. I don't read my mistakes back. So I think, within the group, there may well be somebody to do that, but proofread it, check your assumptions that actually they make sense. Check that you're friendly and family understand what you're saying, because if they understand it well and don't actively know the detail, then probably you're doing about the right job. So I'd just say, yes, get that external support. Maybe you don't need to pay for it though.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. Robert Saunders, you have a question for Richard.
I do, Richard. The question is, in terms of time scale from the inception of a neighbourhood plan in particular I'm thinking of, through to the finalised plan approved by the council, that kind of thing. Just wondering what the time scale is, but also concerned the great amount of time and effort that's required of a lot of people to make it happen.
Thank you, Robert. That's a very important question. And the reason why I regard the process as being important is because it is a long-term commitment. Now, that doesn't mean that every single individual here has to say, I'm going to dedicate the next 2 years of my life to this. Some people will have times when they can give more energy. Some people have times when they can give less energy. The process is important because it is that ongoing set of activities about learning about your area, about uncovering new ideas, about testing yourself. That is an ongoing process, and actually don't regard success as being, in next April, we've produced a plan. And then we all sit back and then suddenly our commitment isn't quite as there as much. The plan, I think, is a milestone, but it's only one of the many milestones. I think it's so important not to get burnout on this. You've got a lot of enthusiasm now, but that could easily burn out. I think it's important to understand and value differences among the group, that within each of the themes, there may be very different opinions on what priorities and actions are. And I think value that and use that as a positive attribute, that there are different opinions, and how can you develop different solutions from understanding those many different opinions. I think you have to pace yourself, and I think this is the role of the committee and the theme groups, to push the entire groups at a level that maintains energy, but at the same time be aware of that sort of burnout a little bit. It's really good to celebrate those successes as you go along. That time when you've suddenly got another 50 people join you, or you're promoting your draft publication, or the MP says something about this in the House of Commons. Those little successes along the way, really valuable to just get that energy level up again. So it's a really important point, Robert. I think it has to be understood by everybody, not just the leaders of these plans, every single member, and then just make sure that you're checking those energy levels as you go through this process.
Great. Thanks, Robert, for a good question, and thanks, Richard. And the final question of the morning session, Charlie Bell.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's just to say that there's so much going on locally, and this is evident from everything that's been said this morning. People are so enthusiastic, and I think there's a danger that because everyone doesn't know what's happening everywhere, that people spend time and energy sort of reinventing the wheel, when actually that work's already going on locally. So I just wondered if there's a plan for how to kind of audit or bring together everything that's happening in the area in terms of biodiversity, transport, energy, all of it, and sort of what would be the best format for that.
Thank you, Charlie. I think that's probably a question some of the theme leaders probably need to check. But when I was talking with Jane earlier, I think it's very important you don't exist in isolation. You clearly connect to a broader system, not just a system that you exist within. There are lots of other initiatives going on out there. Some of them will directly support and complement you. Some of them may have the same end goal but a different approach. And I think in these processes, that scoping is really one of the really important first parts of it. It's really important to check who out there might be able to do something to help you along the way. It's really important to understand, I mean, some of the work I've done with Richard previously is the sort of stakeholder analysis, to really start understanding who out there is everybody that can work with you, understand their influence. Are they somebody who is really important and hugely influential? Are they somebody who can create barriers, or somebody who can push you along further? And you really need to start looking, I would say that scoping, looking, understanding, learning is a really important part of that process. It should take a long time before you start to say, and therefore our actions are this and this. And I think it was Einstein that said something along the lines of, you should spend 95% of the time looking at the problem and the 5% developing the solutions. It really helps you to take that much broader breadth on understanding the problems before you start to define the solutions. Scoping out who counts, who matters, who helps, who can put barriers up is really important.
Fabulous. That's a really good place to end this morning's session. On behalf of everybody, thank you very much for that presentation and for responding to those questions. So we're now a minute or two away from lunchtime. So we'll have half an hour for lunch. So from 12:10 through till 12:40. If you haven't yet put the number 1, 2, or 3 in front of your name, please don't forget to do that. And we'll have a video message from Philip Dunn MP to commence the afternoon session. And we're going to just have a brief comment from Chris Welsh on the local plan and the importance of that in terms of the long-term development of Shropshire. So thank you all for a really fabulous morning. We've had the best part of 120 people all morning. Obviously there's been great questions, so thanks for your presence and your attention. I'm going to reward you with an extra minute for lunch. So yeah, if you'd like to mute yourself and maybe turn off your video, and I'll welcome you all back at 20 to 1. Have a nice break. Thank you.